Over the weekend, significant rioting. Brussels, The Hague, Rotterdam, Vienna, parts of Croatia, many European cities saw... I mean, when I say riots, I don't mean, you know, Jeremy Corbyn's brother and a few protesters. I mean real riots, you know, cars being set fire to and all the rest of it. And this is because of European lockdowns. Now, Austria have gone much further than anybody. They began last week by locking down the unvaccinated, which I talked about on this show and how monstrous I felt that it was. But now they've locked down the country because COVID deaths have risen quite sharply. And they're saying that by February, the vaccine must be mandatory. And my feeling is that many of the other protests that went on around Europe, and yes, people don't like being made to wear face masks and all the rest of it, I think people are fearing more European lockdowns, perhaps Germany coming within the space of a few days, and this idea that mandatory vaccines could well be introduced. Now, I may be wrong about this in terms of the psychology, but I think generally we've been pretty compliant since March last year with what we've been asked to do in the name of fighting the pandemic. I sense some of that is wearing thin. And 12% of this country, for argument's sake, have not had the vaccine. And it doesn't matter how much you try and push them, bully them, educate them, do whatever you want to do. I don't see that figure changing, and 50,000 people leaving the care sector the other week rather proved that to me. I think the Austrian government have bitten off more than they can chew. I think this is a battle they can't win. But to get into the psychology of it all, I'm joined by Emma Kenny. Emma, good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
No, not at all. You know, you're a psychologist. This is what really interests me. I've got a feeling, Emma, that, you know, governments have won virtually every battle through this pandemic. The size of government, the scope of government, the centralisation of government has grown right across the Western world, and they've pretty much got away with it. But I just got a feeling that in Austria, you know, if they tell people, and Schallenberg, you know, he said, didn't he? You know, there he is, the Chancellor, saying that the police would be on the streets enforcing this. I mean, it's almost unimaginable that this is going on again in Austria. I just get a feeling that people aren't going to comply. What's your take on this?
I mean, I think I agree with everything you've said. And certainly, I think one of the most amazing things about human beings is that we are mostly compliant. So we like the status quo, particularly in democracies. The irony is that when people think that we're out there wanting to do terrible things by protesting, etc., it's never the way. It's always the last resort. So actually, we like order. So when people stop having that order because things are going wrong and the world is being shaped in a way that we're not happy with, it's really important for governments to listen. Now, the thing about protesting is you're going to get a lot more from a peaceful protest than you are from a riot or a rageful one. Even though tensions run high, there's a lot of research. Now, there's an amazing, amazing political scientist called Erica Chenoweth, and she actually spent her time researching the impact of these kind of episodes. And the truth is, all you need is about 3.5% of the population to say no, and everything crumbles. So the reality is, if 3.5% of people in the UK or across Europe, in individual countries, say no, it's not going to happen, ever. And that's why protesting is so important, so effective, but should always be very peaceful. That's the irony, that I think sometimes people think that the louder, the more aggressive, the more violent, that actually becomes quite exclusionary. You have to be quite able-bodied. You have to have a particular mindset, maybe the warrior gene going on in you. But when you have peaceful protests, and you think about in 1986, the Filipinos totally changed with the prayer of the people power movement. You had the Marcos regime folded on the fourth day with that. 2003, you had the people of Georgia. They got rid of their leader through the Bloodless Rose Revolution. These things make a difference. So I think you're right. I don't think there's a chance that they'll be able to mandate in countries where we're used to having democracy, because if ever you were going to say there was something against it, that's it.
And of course, normally, Emma, in a democracy, of course, we don't need to riot and protest because we've got other parties to vote for. It's just that when it comes to lockdowns, there hasn't been that much opposition. Although it's fair to say in Austria that the Freedom Party are opposing the mandate. But no, very interesting, the fact that 3.5%, if they're utterly determined and protesting peacefully, can be a completely unbreakable barrier for a government. It's not a figure I've heard
Absolutely.
before. It's not a figure I've heard before, and let me tell you, it's now not a figure I'm going to forget. So thank you for coming on to GB News.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.